let's go back to the principle. It's a very good question. So the principle is, when Shen is in order, it is the general for all the other emotions. When Shen is in retreat, which is what happens when we abuse it, it recedes, then all the emotions come up and you have mental imbalance. Follow what I'm saying here? So, in general, the Rishi will be calming and relaxing and centering on whoever, because it's going to build Shen, and Shen then begins to take back in control, and it controls all the other chaotic emotions. They become less chaotic. Shen becomes active as a general. When we abuse it, Shen retreats. That's what how they describe it. Shen retreats. Then you got all the chaos. That's what you want. That's what you get.
So can you give an example for something for mental illness one? Just one. What about bipolar? What about
Bipolar?
bipolar or schizophrenia or?
Oh, bipolar.
Bipolar, sorry.
I thought you said bipolar. I didn't. So in my book, Depression Free for Life, I talk about a 90% success rate. And so I don't say, here, take Rishi for your depression. I don't do, I'm looking at the whole thing. So please understand that. And a 90% success rate and an 80% success rate for bipolar. Success rate means no relapses. No relapse. So I use all the angles. I make sure you're not allergic. I make sure your blood, optimal pH for the blood is 7.46 for mental health. Brain cells are working optimally, so I make sure your pH is optimal. I make sure you're not taking things that create brain allergies. You can go into a schizophrenic state, I've seen this, in 30 seconds. If you take something that's going to create a brain allergy, your brain swells and your mind just goes. That really does happen. Hey. So the concept here is that then we look at your nutrients that balance and build your neurotransmitters. We look at neurotransmitter building, and we talk about going vegan, because when you take meat, fish, chicken, and dairy, genetically people don't do as well. They did a study in Russia with incurable schizophrenics, and they simply water fasted them. And after 28 days, 65% of the incurables became normal. Stopped being schizophrenic. What happened? And then they observed more. So when they went back and people stayed vegan, they were fine. But the people who ate meat became schizophrenic again. What happened? Well, there's certain substances in the meat that the schizophrenic people had lost their ability to convert. You see what I mean? And so they had a 6 times higher level of that substance, and that made their brains go haywire. So when we add all those together, we're looking at, pretty overall good results. Like depression, I say 90%, meaning no relapse, and 80% success rate using totally natural approaches, like I mentioned, the 5 levels with manic depression.
Even borderline is something that can be there?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And schizophrenia, I'm going to say 50, 60%. That's not my research. Abram Hoffer, 40 years ago, out of Vancouver, Canada, was, with use of certain supplements, just supplements alone, get about a 50% success rate. I get a little higher in that using all the pictures. He just used a B3, B6, E, and vitamin C, and he got results. So yes, improving brain function, yes, improving neurotransmitter function, yes, improving kind of the inner spiritual energies, like with the plant herbs, we're getting a lot stronger. Like anxiety, the research can show that all your anti-anxiety medications, they can help initially, because they can regulate, but after 25 weeks, people start to relapse, and what's worse is they end up having more anxiety because the circuits are affected negatively. But by using the different herbs we're using, and looking at the reishi and looking at the, we're able to getting more sustained repair of the system, which is quite important. Do you follow what I'm saying here? So we're looking again about repairing the system rather than simply putting a drug that kind of suppresses it, and it only works for, really the research is maybe 25 weeks before really you start having a 4 times higher rate of relapse than if you didn't do anything. And guess what? Schizophrenia is the same thing. This is amazing. They showed in 1947 at Boston State Hospital, they took the records versus when Thorazine came out. Do you know what Thorazine is? It's one of the very first antipsychotics. And people were calmer, but at 5 years, there was many more relapses with the people on Thorazine because it actually caused a shift in the brain function, shape and function. To the extent that when they looked around the world, it was so lopsided that in a 5-year, what we call relapse thing, that 63% of the people on Thorazine had relapses. And I'm saying that fits with the modern stuff we're using today too, antipsychotics, versus that, 63, and then you look at 37% didn't have relapse. And it flipped around the other way. When people got no medications, their 5-year relapse was actually better. Why? Because these drugs interfere with brain metabolism and actually cause long-term imbalances. Follow what I'm saying here.
They affect the liver, they have toxicity.
They affect the nervous system, tardive dyskinesia, irreversible type things. But they actually change the shape of the brain. They make your brain much more super sensitive to dopamine, because the medications suppress dopamine, so the brain says, fine, I'll just become more sensitive, and that becomes a structural change, and that's partly why they get a relapse. But you follow on. I want to get back to the question of, we think pharmaceuticals are doing the job. They are not doing the job.
They're treating the symptoms and not doing repair.
Worse. They're making you worse in the long run. They suppress the symptoms temporarily. You have more relapses within 5 years on the medication versus if you didn't take anything. They compared, to say, the records at Boston State Hospital, 47, they didn't have any of these drugs, less relapse compared to taking medication, because it changes, it causes what the head of the National Institute of Mental Health said, perturbations in the brain. In other words, it's actually changing the brain physiology, not in good ways, and so there's more relapses.